Anyone who knows what I do for a living and seen any films that I've been in, they know that I turn up and get stuck in. I roll up the sleeves and I do what I'm capable of, which is quite a lot. Everyone knows Jason Statham as the tough guy who does his own stunts, but behind the cameras a different story unfolds. In 2025, medical reports surfaced showing the real cost of his dangerous career: broken ribs, concussions, a wrist fracture that never healed properly. His wife Rosie recently demanded he stop doing certain stunts because doctors told them something that terrified both of them. The man who survived drowning, bee stings, and countless fights now faces his biggest enemy yet, and this time, he can't fight his way out of it. He was born on July 26, 1967, in Shirebrook, Derbyshire, a town that didn't offer dreams, only jobs that crushed backs and hopes. Coal mining had shaped the land and the lungs of the men who worked there. Jason Statham came into a world built on survival, not comfort. His father, Barry, born in 1939, lived through Britain's harshest winters and bleakest paychecks. By the time Jason was born, Barry was juggling anything that brought money: house painting, coal mining, street vending, even lounge singing in the Canary Islands when local work dried up. Jason's mother, Eileen Yates, was a professional dancer who brought rhythm and spark to their working-class routine. Their home wasn't broken, it just refused to stop moving. His brother Lee played guitar, Barry sang, and Jason kept time on the drums. At age 10, they moved to Great Yarmouth, where Barry sold cheap goods in open markets, and Jason learned to read people. He could have joined full-time, but instead he chose martial arts at age 11. Kickboxing, Chinese martial arts, later Muay Thai, Judo, Krav Maga. He earned a black belt and mastered throws like Seo Nage and holds like Kesa. In school, he crossed paths with Vinnie Jones, both just boys. Then, Jason played forward from 1978 to 1983, and the discipline of football added to his mindset. At 12, he added diving, training professionally for 12 years with Great Britain's national squad. In 1990, he competed in the Commonwealth Games, placing 8th in the 1 meter, 11th in the 3 meters, and 12th in the 10 meters. He didn't make the Olympics and knew he'd started too late. While training, he still sold fake perfume and jewelry with his father. Modeling came in 1996-97 with campaigns for Tommy Hilfiger, Griffin, and Levi's, but it paid little. Guy Ritchie was casting Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and needed a real hustler. Jason was perfect. He earned $5,000 for the role. 2 years later, he earned $15,000 for Snatch. His career took off not because he learned to act, but because he lived the life. In 1993, he danced nearly naked in the Shaman's Cumin on video, and again in a gold cage in Erasures, Run to the Sun. In 1997, French Connection hired him as the face of their campaign, but modeling paid little, so he kept hustling. In 1996, he even escaped undercover police while selling a counterfeit Rolex by talking his way out. Ritchie later tested him by having him sell fake goods during audition. Jason nailed it and got the role. Lockstock in 1998 earned $3.9 million in the UK, and his gritty accent almost got him cut. But Ritchie fought for him. In Snatch 2000, he played Turkish opposite Brad Pitt and Benicio del Toro, breaking 2 ribs during filming. Tension even broke out between him and Del Toro during an improvised threat. The film made $83.6 million globally. In 2002's Transporter, he refused stunt doubles and performed the infamous oil fighting scene for 15 exhausting takes, leaving his ribs badly bruised. He drove cars at 80 miles per hour through Marseille streets with no green screen. Transporter 2 made stunts even riskier. He climbed a 10-story building using suction cups, slipped, and fell 20 feet, spraining his ankle. In the simulated jet fight, real G-force hydraulics caused chaos, and tension with a co-star led to rewrites. Transporter 3 brought more brutal stunts, a dislocated shoulder, and months of pain. In The Bank Job, he played a thief in a story tied to real MI5 files that had just been declassified, causing government monitoring and production tension. In Death Race, he performed dangerous driving scenes and scorching metal stunts without gloves, leading to injuries and MPAA. In War, a sword slipped and sliced open his arm 12 stitches, and he kept filming. In The Italian Job, he nearly drowned when a rig malfunctioned in a flooded tunnel. In Crank, he ran across real Los Angeles highways with no barricades, causing accidents and lawsuits. In The Expendables 3, he drove a truck off a pier when the brakes failed and survived only because of his diving background. In The Mechanic, he insisted on real explosions, injuring crew and nearly himself. In Fast and Furious 6, he suffered severe whiplash during a 260-foot ramp stunt. In The Meg, he nearly drowned when a diving cage cracked 45 feet underwater. In Mechanic, Resurrection, he scaled a skyscraper with no harness during early takes, fell 30 feet, got a concussion, and production rewrote scenes. On Spy, he clashed with the director and briefly walked off set. In Hobbs and Shaw, he broke his wrist during a 100 mph motorcycle stunt. Critics said he avoided dramatic roles, even turning down a Dark Knight audition, but he built a $20 million per film brand. In relationships, he dated Kelly Brook for 7 years until 2004, was devastated by the breakup, then dated Sophie Dahl briefly in 2005 before meeting Rosie Huntington-Whiteley in 2010. They had ups and downs. Paparazzi danger, reconciliations, a son in 2017. Struggles from long filming schedules, therapy, healing them. A mansion purchase in 2022, and drone invasions in 2023 that made Rosie demand stunt limits. In 2024, the beekeeper grossed $162 million on a $40 million budget, despite his bee allergy and mild reactions on set. In 2025, he starred in A Working Man and mentored 12 stunt performers, pushing for better safety after a 2023 hospitalization. His films have grossed over $8.5 billion worldwide. He regrets turning down a James Bond audition in 2006. Donated $1 million to UK diving programs in 2020, funded over 120 scholarships by 2022, and survived numerous death hoaxes in 2025. But what nobody knew was this: while the world mocked him, he was rebuilding. For the first time in his 60-year career, he stopped chasing roles. He chased himself instead. Months passed. The headlines faded. The memes stopped. The petitions disappeared. Under the next outrage, he stayed. Quiet. Therapy turned into discipline. Discipline turned into purpose. And purpose turned into something he hadn't felt since he was 30. Hunger. Then, one morning, his agent called Barrett's, a script, low budget. Indie. Director you've never heard of. But, Sam, it feels like you. He almost hung up, but something in him, still alive, said yes. He drove himself to the audition. No entourage. No cowboy hat. No legend. Just a man trying. Again. The director watched him read one scene. Just one. When Sam finished, the room was silent. The director whispered, "Where have you been?" Sam smiled. "Finding my way back." That indie film shot in 19 days with borrowed cameras went on to become the biggest surprise of the year. A quiet, aching story about a broken father trying to repair the pieces of his life. People didn't just love the film, they loved him. Again. Standing ovations. Interviewers apologizing. Critics calling it the greatest performance of his career. Annette, 80 years old, on a chilly night in December, he walked onto a stage he thought he'd never see again. A standing ovation that lasted nearly 2 minutes. He took the microphone, voice shaking. "I thought I was finished. Turns out, I just needed to start over." The room erupted. His comeback wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, it wasn't designed for headlines. It was earned. Success didn't hit him all at once. It crept in slowly. A journalist wrote an article calling his performance a in quiet pain. A clip of one emotional scene went viral not because it was dramatic, but because every line felt like an apology he never got to say in real life. And then came the moment he never expected. His agent called again. "You might want to sit down." "Why?" "You've been nominated." He froze. Not for a Lifetime Achievement Award. Not for nostalgia. Not out of pity. Best Actor. At 80 years old, the same industry that threw him out was inviting him back with both hands. But here's what nobody saw. That night, after the nominations were announced, he didn't celebrate, he didn't open champagne, he didn't call anyone. He went to his porch, sat in his old wooden chair, and watched the sunset. He whispered to himself, "Don't let this break you again." The Oscar and theater buzzed as he walked in. Not with judgment this time, with respect. People stood as he passed. Directors he admired, actors he once mentored, younger stars who grew up watching him. He sat in his seat, fingers trembling slightly. The category was announced. 5 names, 5 performances, 5 stories. Then the envelope opened. The presenter paused, one of those long, theatrical pauses designed for ratings, and the Oscar goes to a heartbeat, a silence, a lifetime. Samuel Hart. The room exploded. He closed his eyes. For a moment, he didn't move. It wasn't shock. It was relief. Relief that the worst moment of his career didn't kill him. He walked to the stage, slowly, as if each step belonged to a different decade of his life. He stood at the microphone. No jokes. No rehearsed lines. Just truth. "I made mistakes. I paid for them, and I thought that meant my story was over. But you don't get to decide when someone's done. People can change. People do change. And I'm standing here because some of you believe that." He held up the statue, his voice breaking. "Thank you for giving an old man another chapter." The audience stood, everyone, all at once. Not for the award. For the journey. After the Oscars, everyone expected him to disappear, again read off into the sunset, trophy in hand, legend restored. But that wasn't what happened, because the moment he stepped off that stage, someone was waiting for him. Not a reporter, not a studio exec. Not a fan, the young indie director who gave him the comeback. Rolled. Eyes read, hands shaking, barely able to speak. "Sam, you saved my film." He shook his head. "No, kid, you saved me." They hugged it for cameras, not for publicity. but because they had walked through fire together and came back standing. That hug became the photo of the night, the offer that changed everything 2 days later. His agent arrived at his house with a look he hadn't seen in years. A look that said, "This is big." She handed him a script. Thick, heavy, kind of script studios guard like treasure. He flipped to the first page, his eyes widened. It was a biographical epic. A role every actor in Hollywood had chased for, a DEA character so complex, so demanding, so exposed that younger stars had turned it down, out of fear. "Why are they giving this to me?" he asked. His agent smiled. "Because after last night, there's no one else who could do it justice." He didn't say yes immediately. He stared at the script for a long time. Then, "If I do this, it'll be the hardest thing I've ever done." His agent nodded. "That's why you have to do it." The Sioin Fahrenheit's you in, but before he could take the role, he knew he had to face one last ghost. From his past, the person who led the push to cancel him. 3 years earlier, the outspoken critic who turned one interview into a wildfire. He called them, no anger. No bitterness. Just wanting the truth. They agreed to meet in a quiet cafe. The critic sat down, nervous. They didn't expect him to come quietly. He spoke first. "You hurt me and I hurt you back. The world cheered for it, but I don't want that ending." The critic swallowed. "I never meant for it to go that far." He nodded. "Neither did I." A silence. Heavy, but healing. Then he said, "Let's not pretend it didn't happen, but let's not drag it forever either." The critic's eyes softened. "You deserve the career you have now. You earned this comeback." He stood, offered his hand. They shook. Not as enemies, not as rivals. As two people finally closing a chapter. What's next? With the past behind him, with an Oscar on his mantle, with a script that could define the final act of his legacy, he stepped outside into the cool evening air. He felt lighter. Stronger. Ready. And with a quiet smile, he whispered to himself, "All right, one more ride." The script sat on his table for 3 days. He read it once. Then again, then a third time slowly, carefully, like handling something sacred. It was the story of a man who lost everything, fame, family, reputation, and clawed his way back with nothing but grit. Too close to home. Too honest. Too real, but that's why he chose it. He called his agent at midnight. "Tell them I'm in SC." Didn't even ask if he was sure she could hear it in his voice. The TR role demanded everything. He had to lose nearly 20 pounds. He had to learn to walk with a limp. He had to dye his hair grain, not movie gray, but lifeless gray. He had to rehearse emotional scenes that cut open wounds he thought were healed. The director warned him, "This will hurt." He answered, "Good. Let it." For months, he trained with vocal coaches, movement coaches, psychologists, but the real work wasn't physical. It was facing himself. Scenes where the character apologizes to his daughter left him trembling long after the camera stopped. A breakdown sequence, raw and unscripted, was so real the crew lowered their cameras out of respect. One young cameraman whispered, "I've never seen anything like that." The world takes notice by him. Stills leaked online. Not polished studio photos, raw captures from the set. Him sitting alone on a porch, staring at the ground, looking hollow, him crying in the rain during a nighttime shoot, him holding onto a wall, exhausted, refusing to cut the scene. People didn't recognize him. They thought it was a new actor, someone unknown, someone fearless. The comments were explosive. "Is this really him? That doesn't look like makeup. This might be career-defining." Studios began quietly preparing award campaigns before filming even wrapped. The shocking twist on SCT-8 happened during a high-intensity scene, a confrontation. Screaming. Years of pain exploding at once. He pushed himself too far. His chest tightened, his breath shortened, his knees buckled, and right there, in the middle of the scene, he collapsed. The set went silent. The crew rushed to him. The director yelled for medics. For a terrifying moment, everything he worked for, the comeback, the Oscar, the redemption, felt like it was slipping away. But he lifted a hand weakly and whispered, "Don't stop the cameras." The director froze. "Sam, you need to rest." He shook his head. "This is real. Film it." They finished the scene, slowly, carefully, painfully. When the cameras finally cut, he was taken to a hospital. Doctors told him he'd pushed his body far past its limit. But when the director visited him that night, he smiled weakly. "Did we get the shot?" The director nodded, eyes wet. "You didn't just get the shot. You changed the movie. What comes next?" The collapse makes headlines. The studio panics. Audiences rally around him. Documentaries start filming. Talk shows beg for interviews. And one question echoes everywhere. When filming wrapped, the studio expected to spend months planning the marketing campaign. They didn't have to, because the world was already waiting. The collapse sunset clip, kept private by the crew, was described in vague whispers. Online. Behind the scenes, photos spread like wildfire. Critics who attended early test screenings tweeted things like, "I'm not being dramatic when I say this might be the best performance in 20 years. Unbelievable. Raw, terrifying, human." He doesn't act in this film, he bleeds. Suddenly, every magazine, podcast, and talk show wanted him, but he stayed. Silent. No interviews. No promotion. No red carpets. He wanted the film to speak for itself, and it did. Premiere NIGHT, he almost skipped it. Crowds exhausted him. Now. Lights made him dizzy. But the director called, I need you there. Not as the star. As the man who lived this story with me. So he went. No tuxedo. No designer suit. He wore a simple black jacket, silver beard, untrimmed, eyes calm. The theater went quiet when he walked in, not out of fear, out of respect. As the lights dimmed, he gripped the armrest, bracing himself. The opening scene hit like a punch. By the halfway point, he could hear sniffles around the room. Near the end, during the sequence filmed the day he collapsed, the audience sat frozen, breaths held, as if afraid to interrupt the truth unfolding on screen. When the credits rolled, nobody moved. Then someone stood. Then another, and another. A full standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. He stayed seated, head bowed, tears slipping down his cheeks. The director leaned over and whispered, You didn't come back. You rose, the global REACTON. The next morning, every headline was a variation of the same theme. A performance for the ages. A masterclass in vulnerability. His career's greatest triumph. The comeback of the century. Clips from the movie racked up millions of views. Younger actors called it required viewing. Directors wrote open letters praising him, but the moment that truly overwhelmed him came from a fan email. Your film made me call my father for the first time in 12 years. Thank you for reminding me that broken things can be repaired. He read it 3 times before whispering, if that's all this movie did, it was worth it. The awards season, BG&S Studios campaigned aggressively. Critics predicted it from day one. Fans demanded it. He was nominated again, not just for Best Actor, for producing, for writing rewrites, for shaping the film's emotional core. 4 nominations. At 80 years old, the industry had buried him, but now they couldn't stop celebrating him. The interview that shut down the internet, a major talk show, begged for a sit-down. He refused until they said he could talk about the film, not the scandal. So he agreed. Interview aired live. Halfway through, the host asked, Why do you think your comeback means so much to people? He paused, long enough that the camera zoomed in. Then he said, Because people want to believe a mistake isn't the end of their story. If an old stubborn fool like me can survive it, maybe they can too. Silence. Then applause. The clip hit 50 million views in 24 hours.